There was that person you tried so hard to like. Charming on the surface, said the right things, made the right impression on everyone else. But every time you spoke with them, something in the conversation never quite flowed. The words never landed where they should have. You walked away vaguely uneasy without being able to name why. You assumed you were the awkward one. Maybe you were overthinking it. Maybe you were just bad with people, so you kept trying. You showed up. You stayed open. You gave the relationship the benefit of the doubt over and over because that is what you do. And then weeks later, sometimes months, sometimes years, the truth surfaced. They were manipulative, cruel underneath the charm, toxic in ways that quietly damaged the people around them. And in that moment, something clicked. A long delayed recognition. You were feeling it the entire time, from the first conversation, from the first dinner. From the first moment your gut went quiet in a way you could not explain. You just had no idea what you were feeling or what you were supposed to do with it. That is the actual experience of an empath, not the clean cinematic superpower of reading the room. The opposite. You sense things long before you can name them. You receive signals the people around you do not receive, and because nobody ever taught you how to interpret what is reaching you, you carry it as confusion, anxiety, self-doubt. You assume something is wrong with you when something is in fact extraordinarily right. Carl Jung called it the unconscious perceptual system. The mind processes an enormous amount of information that never reaches conscious awareness. Micro-expressions on someone's face, the way a tone of voice tightens half a second before a topic gets dodged. Small inconsistencies between what someone says and what their body does while they are saying it. The atmosphere in a room when a particular person walks in and the conversation subtly shifts. Most people's brains filter all of that out. Empaths do not. The signals get through, processed below conscious thought, and delivered as a felt sense rather than a logical conclusion. This is not mysticism. It is a perceptual system operating at a sophistication most people never reach. The problem is that nobody hands you the framework. So you carry the perception without understanding it. You start to believe the feelings are yours when they are not. You confuse receiving a signal with possessing an emotion. You take on weight that was never meant for you. And that single misunderstanding, repeated thousands of times across a life, is the root of nearly all the exhaustion, overwhelm, and self-doubt empaths experience. There are 5 core abilities at play. Used unconsciously, they drain you. Used consciously, they sharpen into one of the most precise instruments a human being can carry. The first is sensing the emotional field of a space. You walk into a house, an office, a gathering, and before a word is spoken, something registers. The air is heavy or electric, or stretched thin with a tension nobody else seems to notice. Jung called this the psychological atmosphere. Every person carries an internal state, stress, grief, suppressed anger, unresolved conflict, quiet joy, and that state radiates outward in ways that are measurable even when invisible. It shows up in micro-expressions, in breathing patterns, in how people hold their bodies, in the specific way a room goes quiet when a certain person enters. Your nervous system synthesizes all of it in real time and delivers a verdict before your conscious mind has processed a single thing. The ability is not the problem. The problem is the default assumption almost every empath carries unconsciously. Every feeling that arises inside me belongs to me. So you walk into someone else's emotional storm, feel the weight, and ask yourself why you are suddenly so low. You carry it home. You spend the next several hours, sometimes days, trying to shake an inner state that did not originate inside you at all. Imagine being able to hear frequencies other people cannot. You walk into a room and hear a low, persistent hum. Nobody tells you the sound comes from outside, so you spend years wondering what is wrong with you, why you keep hearing that sound, when all you ever needed was to recognize the source is not inside you. The shift is not to become less sensitive. It is to ask one question, practice consistently until it becomes automatic. Did this feeling exist before I walked in here? That single question changes everything. You stop drowning in atmospheres. You start reading them. You can walk into a room full of tension, recognize it clearly, feel it without becoming it, and remain yourself. The ability stops being a drain and becomes information. The second ability is seeing patterns long before they become visible. You meet someone. On the surface, everything is fine, reasonable, personable, socially fluent. But in the rhythm of the conversation, in how they avoid certain emotional depths, in a small inconsistency between what they say and how they say it, in the way they position themselves around vulnerability, you notice something. Not enough to name, enough to make you hesitate. What you are picking up on is their pattern of operation, not who they present themselves to be. The underlying structure, how they actually handle conflict, how they approach intimacy and then retreat from it, the habits that repeat across every relationship they have ever had, often without their own awareness. Jung spent decades studying this. Human behavior is not random. It is structured. Every person operates according to deeply embedded psychological patterns formed early, repeated for life, growing more sophisticated and harder to see over time, but never actually disappearing. Empaths often detect these patterns from the very first chapter, before any logical evidence supports the perception. And here is where the painful irony lives, because empaths are also the people most likely to talk themselves out of what they have seen. There is no proof yet. The person seems fine. You do not want to be unfair. You have been told your whole life you are too sensitive. So you reframe what you noticed in a more generous light. You decide to give it more time. And 6 months later, the thing you saw in the opening pages plays out exactly as you knew it would. The ability is not for analyzing people. It is not for moving through the world with suspicion. It exists for one specific purpose, so that you do not repeatedly place yourself inside structures whose ending you can already foresee. The proper use is simple, though emotionally difficult. You trust what you perceive even before you can explain it. You move closer when you see consistency. You step back when you feel misalignment. No drama, no declarations, just clarity. When you stop betraying your own perception in order to protect a hope that has no foundation, the entire landscape of your life shifts. You stop living in the exhausting cycle of seeing clearly, ignoring what you see, waiting for it to unfold, and then grieving something you could have avoided. The third ability is sensing the shadow behind the mask. Some people show up in your life looking almost perfect. They say the right things. They carry themselves with warmth and confidence. They make you feel safe in a way that seems completely natural. And yet there is a faint signal, like a small crack in a surface that should be smooth. The more you try to ignore it, the more it returns. What you are sensing is what Jung called the shadow, the hidden layer of a person's psychology. The parts they have rejected, suppressed, or buried because those parts do not fit the image they have constructed for themselves in the world. The unprocessed anger beneath the calm. The deep insecurity beneath the confident exterior. The fear of abandonment beneath the person who always leaves first. the contempt beneath the smile. Jung wrote that everyone carries a shadow, and the more thoroughly someone has buried it, the more powerfully it operates in their life, unseen and unaddressed. Empaths sense the gap between what is being shown and what is actually present underneath. Not always with enough clarity to articulate it, but enough to feel the misalignment. And this is where so many empaths lose themselves. The moment you sense someone's pain, the wounded part of them, the part that never got what it needed, something in you wants to help. You see where their behavior comes from. That understanding leads, slowly and almost without notice, to justification. Staying in situations you should leave, tolerating things you should not tolerate, pouring yourself into someone else's healing as if it were your responsibility. But understanding someone's pain does not make them safer to be close to. Seeing where their behavior comes from does not reduce its impact on you. Your insight is not a contract. You did not agree by virtue of being able to see someone's wound, to become the person who heals it. The shadow belongs to each person, and only they can do the work of facing it. No amount of your love, your patience, your understanding, or your sacrifice will do that work for them. People change when they are ready to look at what they have been avoiding, not because someone else saw it for them. The correct use of this ability is discernment. You can still see both sides of a person. You can still hold compassion for their pain, but you do it without trading your own well-being for the connection. You hold clarity rather than staying out of hope. You see the shadow, and you know when to stop walking with it. That moment of stopping, that quiet, clear decision to honor what you perceived, is not coldness. It is the full maturity of the sensitivity that once made you vulnerable. The fourth ability is feeling the direction of things before they arrive. Everything looks fine. A new relationship, a new job, a new path. The conditions are right. The surface is smooth. But there is a quiet, persistent something inside you that does not feel at ease, like sensing a current moving in a direction you cannot quite name. Time passes, things unfold, and the direction you sensed turns out to be exactly where they were heading all along. This is not predicting the future. The future is not available to anyone. Jung understood this differently. The unconscious is synthesizing constantly far more information than the conscious mind can hold. Subtle shifts in how someone interacts with you. Small inconsistencies between what is being said and what is being done. An atmosphere in a situation that does not match the narrative being presented. Individually, none of these would be enough to draw a conclusion. Your unconscious connects them and delivers the result, not as a thought, but as a quiet inner signal. The accuracy is rarely the issue. The issue is what most empaths do with the signal. They rationalize it away because trusting it would require change, leaving something, letting go of something, facing a truth that is inconvenient or painful. So they tell themselves they are being too sensitive. They convince themselves things might shift. They wait for evidence they already know, on some level, is only going to confirm what they have already felt. Jung pointed to this directly. Human beings cling to what they want to be true far more readily than they stay honest with what they actually perceive. That clinging does not change the direction things are heading. It just means you stay in the current longer before the wave breaks. The strength of this ability is not in knowing what will happen. It is in having the honesty and the courage to stop moving in a direction you have already recognized is wrong. Not recklessly, not impulsively, just with enough inner honesty to stop pretending you do not feel what you feel. When you begin to live this way, trusting the signal, adjusting your course early rather than waiting for the crash. You stop living reactively. You start living with precision. You stop needing disaster to teach you the lessons your own perception was already trying to give you. The fifth ability is emotional resonance. You spend time with someone, the conversation was not difficult, nothing dramatic happened, and you walk out hollowed, heavy, filled with something that does not belong to you. You spend the next several hours, sometimes the next several days, trying to shake a weight you cannot name. This is not metaphor. It is neurological. Human beings are wired for unconscious attunement. It is part of how we connect, how empathy develops, how we understand each other without words. For empaths, the mechanism operates at unusually high intensity. You do not just attune, you merge. Their anxiety becomes yours. Their grief settles into your body. Their unresolved tension finds a home in your nervous system. You carry it out without realizing for hours, sometimes days, that what you are feeling is not even yours. This is not a character flaw, but without awareness, it will drain you completely. The misuse looks like resonating with everyone, constantly, without any inner anchor. Your emotional state becomes a mirror of whoever you are around. At home, you are one person. At work, you are another. With certain friends, you shrink. With others, you expand. Over time, you lose track of who you actually are beneath all the resonance, and that loss of self becomes its own kind of crisis. The correct use begins with one fundamental shift: maintaining an inner anchor while you connect. This does not mean disconnecting. It does not mean being less present or less caring. It means keeping a part of your attention turned inward even while you are fully engaged with someone else. Noticing your own breath, feeling your own body, being aware of your own baseline so that you can recognize the moment something is pulling you away from it. And then, after demanding interactions, you give yourself time to return. Not by analyzing what happened, not by replaying the conversation, just by being still, allowing yourself to recognize gently and without judgment that some of what you are feeling is not yours, and letting it settle the way sediment settles in still water, until what remains is actually you. When you stop merging with everyone, you stop losing yourself. And when you stop losing yourself, you can actually show up more fully. You become, paradoxically, more useful to the people around you. Not because you absorb their pain, but because you remain steady while they move through it. Your presence becomes grounding rather than reactive. That is a far more powerful gift than exhausting yourself by carrying what was never yours. Jung wrote that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. He called the process individuation. And for empaths, it is not a soft, abstract process. It is structural. Becoming yourself first requires reclaiming yourself from all the places you have left pieces of who you are. In emotions you absorbed and called your own. In relationships you maintained not because they were right, but because you could feel the other person's pain and did not know how to leave. In choices you made based on signals nobody ever helped you understand. Individuation is not about feeling less. It is not about becoming cold or detached or building walls so high that nothing can touch you. It is about placing your abilities in their proper position, using them consciously rather than being used by them unconsciously. The unintegrated empath moves through life like an open door. Everything enters. Everything affects them. They feel and absorb. They understand and try to save. They perceive and doubt what they perceive. The result is a life that is exhausting, confusing, and increasingly hollow because they are forever giving pieces of themselves away without any framework for why it is happening or how to stop. The empath who has begun individuation moves differently. They still feel deeply. They still see what others miss. They still carry a remarkable capacity for empathy and understanding, but they create space between perception and reaction. They learn to hold what they feel without being swept away. They begin to trust their perception instead of arguing themselves out of it. And they make choices in relationships, in environments, and in how they spend their energy based on clarity rather than obligation. This is not an easy transition. Most empaths have been conditioned from very early in life to believe that their value lies in their availability, in always being there, in always understanding, in always putting someone else's need ahead of the quiet signal inside themselves. So when they begin to change this, when they stop automatically absorbing and saving and overgiving, they feel guilt. They feel selfish. They feel like they are becoming someone they do not recognize. Jung was clear on this. The maturation of compassion does not look like withdrawal. It looks like wisdom. It looks like understanding that you cannot help anyone from a place of depletion. It looks like recognizing that your worth is not defined by how much you sacrifice. The shift from unintegrated empath to integrated empath is this. You stop using your abilities as a reflex and start using them as an instrument. You stop reacting to every signal and start discerning which signals are asking something of you and which are simply information. You stop making your perceptions everyone else's business and start using them quietly to guide your own path. From that place, from that stable, grounded inner center, something remarkable happens. Your abilities do not diminish. They sharpen. They are no longer clouded by the noise of constant absorption, no longer distorted by the desperation to save or fix or be needed. They become clean, accurate, genuinely useful. You begin to move through the world not as someone overwhelmed by everything they feel, but as someone who feels everything and is not overwhelmed. You become a still point in the middle of movement, a presence that does not react to every current, but reads the current with precision and moves accordingly. You are not too much. You never were. The fact that you feel things deeply, that you pick up on what others miss, that you carry an awareness of the world most people never access, that is not a flaw. It is not a curse. It is evidence that your perceptual system is operating at a level most people never reach. The only thing that was ever missing was the framework. Someone telling you what this is, why it works the way it does, what happens when you use it without awareness, and what becomes possible when you learn to use it consciously. The work from here is not dramatic. It is not a single revelation that changes everything overnight. It is a series of small, quiet choices. Pausing before you absorb, asking whether a feeling is yours before you carry it, trusting your perception even when you cannot yet justify it logically, staying inside yourself while you connect with others, returning to yourself after you have been out in the world. Practice consistently. These small choices accumulate into something profound, a life where your sensitivity is no longer a liability, but a form of intelligence, where your depth of feeling is no longer a weight you carry, but a lens that helps you see more clearly than almost anyone around you. The world does not need you to absorb its pain. It needs you to be a presence that is not moved by it, a presence that sees clearly, feels deeply, and remains completely and unmistakably yours. That is not sensitivity. That is consciousness.